Nah, I got something to prove and I ain't never gonna give up. Plenty of juice and I ain't never gonna waste it. Something to do and I ain't never wanna quit it. So come on, get a little bit, I know you wanna play with it.
Coming to you from Studio Iguana Monk down in the Big Dirty, it's the Twisted Pop Podcast, where we explore what it means to be a working artist living in the real world. Please welcome your hosts, Larry Lines and Troy Winston.
So, this is the Twisted Pop Podcast, episode 12.
12 it is.
12 it is. This time, we're not doing the interview.
This time I'm Troy Winscott.
And I'm Larry Lines.
And this time we don't do the interview.
Hey, Aaron Trump is doing the interview.
And he did this when Harvey was coming through, and because we missed a week.
Yeah.
But we still missed it.
We still did miss it, yeah. Because there's no way to put all that stuff together with everything that's happening. Sometimes you're going to miss an episode.
Yeah.
It's not like we have a big budget over here.
Yeah.
But he's interviewing Rick Hale. He's a musician. We know almost nothing about this interview, which is pretty exciting for me.
Yeah.
Because then we can just put this thing together, put it out there, and listen to it. Because I've listened to. Well, I can't say I know nothing about the interview. I've listened to like a couple seconds to make sure it's there, and it sounds pretty good. And I'm interested in listening to it. The interesting thing about this is that this is kind of the concept of twisted pop, right?
Yeah.
The original 1999 version.
What was that version? It was, what was our big goal on that? I know it, but I'm just...
Yeah, I know. There was like a big manifesto.
For our tens of thousands of listeners.
Yeah, for our tens of thousands of people who were there at the time.
Yeah. Where were you working at the time?
Oh, man. I was, when we first started Twisted Pop, I was at Production Access, which is a company that's now owned by Halliburton.
Oh.
Yeah. And, I was just a junior programmer at the time. And I had made that website, and I thought that it was nothing special because I made it and I was a junior guy.
I see.
But anyway...
I was working at TiVo.
You were working at TiVo, that's right. Oh my God. TiVo.
Holy crap.
And that doesn't necessarily exist. No, nobody knows it as TiVo anymore.
Well, I think it's Roku now. I recognize the graphics like... Wow.
Man, we've got a dog. What is it? A pack of dogs out there.
It sounds like a 1950s horror movie where the werewolf is about to come and the wolves are like attacking him.
They almost sound like coyotes.
Yeah, that's kind of what it sounded like. I think it's Roku now, but because I recognize a lot of the graphics, like every time it does the restart.
Oh yeah,
it's almost the same feeling as TiVo.
And I mean the patent, and maybe not the same implementation, but the patent technology is in everything now, right? Like those.
Yeah. And the place card when it moves the cityscape like in front of you, it's always what TiVo wanted it to do was to have things like commercials or movies that would go across the screen that you could just say, I want to watch that.
Oh.
And they implemented some of it during commercials. Yeah. And when commercials popped up that were associated with TiVo, you could go record that.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's funny to think of. I imagine watching what you watch on TV now, just the way we scroll through Netflix, that kind of stuff. But Anyway,
what you were saying was...
Oh, the original concept of Twisted Pop was supposed to be a consortium. And it really, 1999 to 2003, when we were first most active, it was all just bulletin board websites and galleries that we put on the web. And then some stories that we tried to put together. But a lot of it was reaching, beyond the technology of the time.
Oh my God, I had some shitty artwork up there, man. I was just starting to play around with Photoshop.
Right, if you go in the Wayback Machine, that site's still there.
Oh, that's embarrassing.
It is embarrassing. The Wayback Machine, what is it, on archive.org?
Oh, I love that site.
Yeah, and they have the Wayback Machine. It's a box at the top. You just type the address in, and there's still stuff up there from those original discussions. Yeah. And those are embarrassing. Like, at first, I was thinking, oh, wow, I can, look over some of these conversations that, are probably on a MySQL database somewhere, on one of my disks in a box, that I'll never look at again, that I think I'll have time for one day. Right. But you think, oh, that'd be interesting to read those conversations. Really not. No, they're it's. I guess it's just like anything. You look at 10 years later and you go, oh, that was my, my broke period or something.
The Baroque period.
No, I'm broke. So, the idea though was that we were supposed to collaborate. There was supposed to be a lot of collaborations. That we were supposed to bring writers, musicians, artists, and whatever else you got there.
There wasn't a whole lot of collaboration. It was just a lot of
arguing.
Yeah, there was a lot of arguing, and I'm trying to remember some of those arguments, but there's no.
The one that I brought up was, what is genius? What is great? Oh, what is greatness? That's it.
Yeah, I do remember that.
And it was dumb. It went on for months. It did. It was like the original.
That hurt me.
I mean, after I saw some of the entries in that thread, which did go on, there's tens of thousands of entries, like from people all over the place.
You're kidding.
Because I let the thread fracture. Yeah. It was basically like an early Reddit, because you could just start a conversation off of a thread, like off of a comment.
Yeah, I remember that.
And, it's really funny to look at Reddit now for me, because I put all that JavaScript in there at the time that, almost behaved like that. So it's like early trolling, like, before the words, the word was coined. Yeah. Trolling. We're trolling each other, and you could see it. Like, no one would just accept, like, okay, I disagree with you, so the conversations are definitely more polite than people are now. Oh, yeah. I definitely, you can definitely gather that. But anyway, we're supposed to be doing some collaboration, and this is kind of more like that. Yeah. Like, anybody that was involved in Twisted Pop could have done anything or started any project. That was the concept, but we never did it. Yeah. And now, years later, maturity, whatever it is that actually gets somebody going on something. I was having conversations with Aaron along the way, always have conversations with Aaron. Yeah. And I was like, you should interview somebody. And I didn't think I was going to get any interviews for months. I was sure that I was going to get into November and go, hey man, you should interview that guy. And then he said, for sure, I'm not going to, he's in Ireland right now. Yeah. He said, for sure, I'm not going to get an interview done before I come back from vacation in this Ireland thing. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And then right before he left, he sent me all these files with this interview on it. So, it's sort of inspiring, because I would like to get other people to interview people. Yeah. Of the tens of people listening, ooh. you can interview whoever you want to. Send it in, I'll put it on. Right. With an intro like this. Right.
Well, let's listen to it.
All right.
Okay, hey, this is Aaron J. Trum, and I've got my friend Rick Hale here. We're in Albuquerque, New Mexico for this episode, and we're going to talk to him about being a recording musician and studio person and pianist and all this great stuff. Rick, hi, say hi to the people.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome.
Yo. Hi, Larry.
Yo.
So, I guess I want to know, like, your history, like, how'd you get into music and why did you start doing this?
Sure. Yeah, I started, I guess my mom says I was always interested in the piano, even as a toddler. So I started, reaching up for those keys even before I could sit there. And I think I started my first lessons when I was about 5 years old, and I took up piano lessons and had several teachers. And always was interested in writing music and interested in the sounds of the piano in terms of, pushing the sustain pedal down and banging on the keys and just getting a lot of different timbres out of the instrument. So I started there, and just eventually, when I was in my teens, I picked up electronic music, and I got my first 4-track, which was a Tascam Portastudio 2, nonetheless.
Dude, I had that.
Yeah, those are great, aren't they? They're the best. And so I really went to town. In fact, I should back up a little bit even before that. And
Shut up!
Shut up! We're recording. Anyway, I found that I could do multi-track recording by using 2 tape decks. So sort of what prompted me to the Portastudio 2 was I wanted to start layering more than 1 track at a time. I'd gotten my Juno 106 over here for my first keyboard, and I was trying to record things where I had 2 parts. So I'd record to 1 channel and then duplicate those channels over to another tape deck and record into the other channel on the other tape deck, and just kept bouncing them back and forth like that.
That sounds very familiar.
You tried that too.
I did a thing, that's exactly what I did. And the reason I got the damn 4-track is because my mom got it for me because she was tired of me using her. And then she, to her chagrin, I realized that I would still need her tape deck to mix down to.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
It's like, goddamn.
Yeah. So we ended up having to need our parents' tape decks. I think I was using my dad's tape deck for that kind of thing too.
Did you ever do what I call a pause loop? So
I'm not sure.
Okay, so this is what you do. It's the same concept as a scratching on the records, where you have 2 of the same beat and you're going back and forth, but you can't do it in real time. So what you do is you take, maybe I have this section of drums that I want to have as my backing drums. So I just tape that on there, and then I rewind them both and pause it. Or I pause this one right at the end, right? And then I pause this one right at the beginning, and then I go again, right?
Oh.
So it creates a big drum loop.
That's
right?
Wow, so, you got fancier with it than I did.
Well, that's even so time consuming, though. It's like, oh my God, but you would do that, and then you have the drums. And then you do what you were just describing. You just start recording over and over again until the tape's like basically gone.
Yeah.
It sounds like crap.
Yeah, exactly. And then every time you bounced it got worse and worse.
Yeah.
And that's why we got into the Portastudio 2, right?
Yeah.
And plus the Portastudio 2 had DBX noise reduction on it, which was a big, big reducer of all that noise that we used to deal with in those days.
Yeah.
So I started off there. Eventually, I got into digital recording through. I think I had a Fostex 8-track digital recorder. Yes. And it didn't even have it did copy and paste, but it didn't have any effects or compression or anything on board.
Nice.
And then from there, I moved up to the Yamaha AW4416, which is a 16-channel hard disk recorder, and it actually had dynamics and a proper mixer. It was pretty much like this mixer right here, just a 16-channel version of it.
Nice.
And then eventually I outgrew that and moved up, just like everybody, to the computers and went into working a lot with Sonar. And now I still work with Sonar a lot, but I also work with Samplitude as well. And I prefer those. And like we were talking about earlier, I just recently got a Harrison Mix Bus. And I don't know that much about it yet, but I'm very eager to dive in there and try it out and see what kinds of results it gives me as well.
So you're super technical kind of guy. Were you ever into computers or programming or anything like that, outside of music? Just
a little bit, but not too much. Right. I would say it. In fact, we had, when I was growing up in Los Alamos, New Mexico, my parents were into computers. And we had a couple of Apples, and we had like a VIC-20 and some stuff like that. Nice. And I think I did some programming in BASIC and got into it. But then I got away from it altogether to where I didn't even use the computer. And my wife had to teach me, when I met her back in like 97, how to double click using a mouse. I didn't even know how to open up an email or anything.
Awesome.
So.
Oh, you lucky duck. Oh well. What about college? Did you go to school for music and production, or what's the deal?
I did go to school for music. I didn't end up getting my degree in composition, but I went and studied some music in school, and most of my production chops and music chops I learned privately and on the go. Through a lot of reading and just hands-on doing it, producing a lot of projects and that kind of thing.
I think that's mostly how you learn how to record music, and it's by doing it.
Yeah, the ear. It's all about how it sounds.
Yeah, and then so you did all this music learning. Did you ever sort of consider another career, or what did you do when you started being an adult?
Yeah. Well, I've always had like a pull between the sciences and music, and so I'm very interested in meteorology and atmospheric sciences.
Cool.
And so I got away from music in school and studied those things instead. And when I got out of school, I decided, actually, after all, I like music better. So I still love weather, meteorology, and storm chasing is sort of the thing I was really interested in, and I love all that stuff. And but that became more my hobby, whereas music became more the thing I was doing for a living. And I think I made the right choice. Although I still love to follow up on weather and to see what's going on with weather and that kind of thing too.
Well, yeah, that makes sense. My thing is hockey. If I was a bigger, stronger guy, I would have been a pro hockey player.
Oh yeah, that would be fun.
But I still play. I mean, I'm still all about it. That's the one thing that I fanboy on. I can you can walk in the room with a big actor. I played with Ani DeFranco and I didn't care. But if you throw a hockey player in the room with me, I'm going to be like, oh, squee! It's Brent Burns. So that's my deal.
That's cool.
So did you ever struggle with it? I mean, we're sitting here in your studio and it's good, and people don't know, but it's in this house up in the Northeast Heights of Albuquerque, which is really great. This is not a cheap neighborhood, and so you're doing well. You've got your shit together, but was it ever a struggle? Did you ever think, oh God, I gotta quit, or any of that?
Yeah, I've always tried to be diverse, and so the hardest time was when I first started. But I think that in terms of the struggle, I've struggled with different aspects of my business at different times. But that's one reason why I've also tried to remain diverse with the different services that I offer out of my studio, so that when one wasn't doing as well, maybe the others were doing better.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that really, helped fill in on most of the gaps for me was instruction, because there's always a lot of you always have people that are looking to come in and record and looking, for that type of thing. But the truth is, if people don't know how to market their project, eventually they might reach a point where they're not sure if they want to record more things. So what I've seen is that it's very valuable to be able to educate people as well, and not necessarily about the music biz, although I am happy to share advice on that, but just on music itself. And I figured too, by being an educator, it would keep me involved. Because one of the things I've seen happen with some of my friends who are terrifically talented musicians, they got careers and other things, and then eventually the career and the family and different things took over their time to where they really had very little time to do music anymore. And I figured if I were doing music somehow for a living, then I would always be doing music.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know for other people, but I figure it's pretty common fear that you're going to just get sucked into whatever job and family and stuff, and that's been my greatest fear, I think, other than like drowning.
Yeah.
Is metaphorically drowning in I had a full-time job at one point doing data conversion, and I ended up getting fired because I just kept working the label during work hours.
Yeah.
And I did the job. I was doing the job. I was good at the job, but I was like, I can't, you get home and it's 5 and you're like, I don't want to do anything else. So that's the biggest fear.
Yeah.
The sort of the other side of that, though, is that skill set that I have as a database programmer, I use constantly now. I mean, it's the linchpin of one of my major competitive advantages is that I can deal with my data in an empowered way that most people can't.
Yeah, and I'll bet for, I'll bet you could speak to, especially when it comes to track management and data flow management, that how important it is to be organized and to label things correctly and to make sure that what we put in our project, especially if we're sending it to other people to mix or even to master, that it's clearly marked as to what it is and laid out properly.
Yeah, and in general in business, I mean, it's my biggest pet peeve about the music business is that people don't understand that it's a business, and they complain that they can't make a living. But if you think about, how most people do business in art and music, if you apply that way of being to, say, a plumber, you'd be on the street. You'd probably get shot. I mean, some of what people do, right? So, it's really interesting to me to come and talk to you because you do have your shit together, and you are not living the fear. You're not stuck in something that you don't want to do, and the first thing you notice when you come into this house is that there's this lively family life. You got 2 kids, right?
Yes.
2 kids. David I've met, and who is supremely talented and helps us do video, and this dude's awesome already. And is he 14, right?
Yeah, he's 14.
And
my daughter is Sophia, and she's 9.
Sophia is 9, and then you got your wife. And what I noticed, you walk in here, and you guys can't see, but you walk in the door, and you're right in the studio, but then you go the other way, and your wife is doing acupuncture back there. So it's this, you drive by in the street, and you think, there's some squares, it's the same. But you go in, and it's they figured it out. They're doing things they love. They're not stuck in the thing, but they haven't gone. My thing is I went so far off into the counterculture that I had to draw back because I was this is way too much. I just want to be an artist. Doesn't mean I want an alternative life to the point of being on drugs or having no family or no good relationships, which is the whole rock star romance thing. We're going to have loneliness, right? You don't have loneliness. You have family and you have what you love. So that's to me, I think that's an inspiring thing.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I don't know how you accomplished that exactly, except you said being diverse and realizing that education is important.
Definitely, and I think one of the other key things is that you hit it on the head, that family is important to us, and so we wanted to be together and to be here, especially for our kids, so that if I felt inspired to go work in the studio, I didn't have to go across town somewhere and be away from everybody to do that. I could just be downstairs in my studio.
Oh, that's awesome.
And the advantages too is that it's given the kids, they've been able to watch our businesses and watch how we work with clients and seeing how a business operates, which like you said a minute ago, a lot of people don't realize that the music business is actually a business. And that just like any business, it has to be, especially when we're dealing with clients, it has to be service oriented to where we're not just giving them a good product, but we're somebody that people want to come back and work with again. And that's how we grow our business, so that we can work with more people.
Yeah, when I came on this show in your seat, I was the interviewee, and we talked about, at one point, how, I think Troy said, he had a teacher that said, it's talent is one thing. You might want to work with people who are talented, or you will want to work with people who are cool to be with, right? And so only one of those do you really need. And it's not the talent, right? So it's important to understand that, you're there to, what you're doing should be not just about you. I mean, you're still important. Your dreams are important too, but, you should be cool to work with and have relationships that work, and
And encompassed in that is reliability. I think that one of the things that we run into in the music industry, not just the music industry, but all industries suffer this to some degree or another, but especially musicians tend to be flaky people.
Oh,
we think it's okay to be an hour late or 45 minutes late. Except for drummers. Drummers are timely since they're timekeepers.
Interesting.
But what I've seen a lot. I'm thinking of an example even recently of somebody that was really talented that I was working with, and I thought their music was really interesting. And I was helping them out doing some stuff, a client, and but then they just got flaky. They just, they wouldn't show up when they said they were going to and stuff like that. And eventually, even though their stuff was good, I don't think I'm going to work with this person anymore because it's just, it gets old.
Yeah, and I've had that experience a bunch of times. I've dropped people who were super talented. And a lot of times I don't really need to even drop people. It's just, I'm going to give you, even what I do now, I need something. I need a guitar track, and I'm gonna, you're cool, you're awesome, we're gonna hang out, I'm gonna give you a chance to do this guitar track, and it's just up to them. They show up or they don't, and then the time comes for me to get the guitar track, and if they haven't shown up, I get it somewhere else, and I don't have to say you're fired, but you got to realize as an artist, you are the one that's responsible for showing up. No one is gonna say, come on, please, because there's 100 more like you, and it's, when it's a problem for me though, is when, what happens is people aren't always flaky. Sometimes it's just what we talked about. It's the fear or the anti-dream has taken them over, right? So, a drummer that I love to use, is, I can't even describe the talent that this guy has. He's on my records, on my last record, and there's one more song at least that we'll have him on, and it's insane the talent the guy has, and it's insane the sort of organizational skill that he has, and his drum room is great. I helped him build it, I send him a track, I send it locked to a click, right? All I have to do is send him a piano and my voice, and he comes up with a drum part, and all he does is just play it 5 times. He just does 5 takes, and then I just throw away all the first 4. I don't care, because I know. And then even like if I do edit, I could take a piece, I don't even have to, I just cut it on the measure. Yeah. He's that tight. Wow. He does these fills. His sound is perfect. I mean, this guy, but he's not a professional for whatever reason. He's an electrical engineer, full-time, kind of a highfalutin job. And the last thing he is flaky. He's the most responsible person that I know. If he says he's going to do something, he does it. But then 2 kids happened. And I'm sure he's happy. I don't think he's like thinking, oh shit, right? I think he loves what he does, and he loves his family, and everything's awesome. But suddenly there was no drums coming from him, and for me, like, that was so troublesome, because I'm like, I lost this dude that's the one thing. You can sort of become more valuable if you have more talent. Because in another guy I have that I work with sometimes, he was integral to the sound of my last record, playing bass. He was going through a lot of stuff and couldn't show up as much. So that was like disturbing as crap to me, because I'm like, I can't use this dude now because he's really not available, but I've built my sound around him.
Right. Yeah.
So I learned to be flexible, from that. I said, okay, I can't be so attached to a sound that I need this one guy to do it, or otherwise I'm going to get screwed.
Unless it's you.
Yeah, unless it's me, which is sort of counter to, you want to be able to rely on what you can rely on, but at the same time, collaboration is everything.
Yeah.
Like, I used to work in a vacuum, right? I'm sure you did too, right?
Yes,
at first.
yeah, I started that way for sure.
Everything's me, right? So it's great because you know how to do everything. But then after a while, you realize I'm going to suck until I can let other people influence me.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to realize.
That's such an interesting thing right there. I mean, that's a whole nother can of worms we could open up there.
Yeah.
I have a client recently that is a lyricist, and she was working with another one of my clients that I recommended that she work with. And my other client knows a lot about, he's a lawyer, so he knows a lot about verbiage and words. and he had some lyrical suggestions, and the client that wrote the lyrics had a hard time, in a sense, letting go of her original ideas, even though in a lot of ways the new ideas were better. It was just hard for this client to let go of her ideas, or the direction, maybe I should say, that the idea was moving in originally, as compared to where it started to move later. And I think one of the things that we realize as we become professionals in music is that it's not really about us, but it's about the song and about the production itself. And to me, I could see why some people would be almost scared to let go of that. Right. But what I've found, and I'm sure you've found a similar experience, is that when we do let go and collaborate with other people that are reliable, and that like one of my buddies, I'll mention him by name, is Gary King, who lives in France, and he's a phenomenal drummer. He's played with a lot of big people, and I've got the privilege of being able to call him a friend. Yeah. And so we've done a lot of music together, and he's the most, he and I have talked about this exact subject, that how important reliability really is with music. But yeah, it's really, I think that getting people around you and then letting go of letting those people actually collaborate with you and contribute to your project, to where you're bringing them in as a contributor rather than a puppet. Yeah. And to where they feel that freedom, or almost that you're investing into them, so that they can bring whatever they're bringing to the project. And I've found when I approach it that way, that the artists that I'm working with put more into it, because they feel that freedom. And I've actually been on the other side of that coin too, where I've had artists wanting me to do keyboard parts and things, and they want to regurgitate note for note to me what they want me to play. Yeah. And that's fine, but it's not as much fun as a situation where somebody says, I want you to do what you would do to this song. Yeah,
and I found that especially now, there's just been this explosion of people who realize that they can do their own vision and go forward. So one of the struggles I've had is in this past year, I've had more collaborators than ever before. I mean, there's just this influx of collaborators, and it's awesome. But at the same time, sometimes I go, God, I wish I had a team that was really just dedicated to my act, right? I mean, I have a pretty well-established act that I do, and there's a brand to it, and there's a sound to it, and there's a vision to it, and I lead that vision. I don't necessarily care if I lead that vision, but sometimes you need to. And the collaborators that I've worked with have added to that and made it way better. But sometimes I struggle with, but they have their own agenda. So I can't just go, hey, Javier, do all these tracks. We've got 2 weeks. Screw you, don't do anything else. That's not going to happen. So I have to learn to flex, and that's the trust thing that I've sort of had to learn over the years, which I didn't have at first, and I didn't learn it either. I learned at first, when I first learned things, I learned that band members were untrustworthy and all of these negative things. And so it's to let go and say, okay, I can wait 2 days, or I don't have to, it doesn't have to be that word. Or one thing that I did that I just felt, so it was like a big breakthrough for me this week, is a woman that I know from Facebook, from one of my groups of people, had a song. She wrote the song. And I'm like, I'm a writer. I'm first and foremost, I'm a performer, but really, I write what I perform. And as a rapper, rap is about what you have to say. Yeah. And that's the key to it. But this lady had this song, and she's like, I'm looking for a male vocalist. And it was just on Facebook. She said a little bit about what she wanted it to sound like, which isn't my sound. But I'm like, something's telling me that I should message her. So I messaged her, and she says, okay, yeah, I need a male vocalist. I want this to sound like this, blah, blah, blah. She sends me a sketch of the song, and I'm like, this is awesome! It was great, huh? It was great. It was, this simple thing. It was exactly sort of something I've been feeling, and it was kind of in my style. Like, it fit my brand. And I was like, you don't need to write everything you sing. And I start, oh my God, I'm a singer. I'm a performer. I don't need to write everything I sing. And maybe it was just I wasn't seeking it before, or maybe I wasn't around the right people that had the right thing to say. But she had this song, and I was like, I'm doing this. And then the next thing I knew, she was like, well, how about a rap verse? And I was like, perfect. So then it's like it was made for me. It's like she said, I'm going to write for Aaron J. Trump. She didn't.
Yeah.
And that just, I would, even a year ago, probably wouldn't have been able to, I would have been like,
yeah,
somebody else's song, fuck that. And I still, I don't do covers. That's not my deal.
Yeah, I don't either.
There's some exceptions, but yeah, it's just that the more you can open up, and the last song that I released and the video and everything, that's just like the basically best received thing that I've ever done, like by a damn sight. This thing's killing. And is this song called Don't Stop. Might as well promo it. Don't stop!
Don't
Aaron
stop!
J. Trump. This my friend Javier Silva and me, we did it together, totally 50-50. But I started off in the way I do things. I wrote a piano thing, I did some vocals, I threw some drums on it, I did a lot of stuff. And I said, okay, I'm just gonna, and I didn't want to send it to him because I was like, I don't want to send because I knew it was good. And I was like, I'm not gonna send the best stuff to get messed up by somebody else, right? But then I thought, let it go. I had to tell myself 100 times, so I sent it, and I just sent the stems to him, all separated. And he said, and then a couple days later he came back and he said, I got rid of the piano mostly because blah blah blah, and he said all this stuff, and then he said, I hope I didn't do too much, and he was really sort of self-conscious. And what he had given me back was he had thrown everything but my vocal away. And he had played guitars, basses, added different drums, did some backup vocals. Basically, on that track, I'm the lead vocalist, and that's it. It's the best fucking song I've ever done. And it's so good. Like, I can brag about it too because I didn't do most of it. I'm perfectly happy to brag about it because he did this work that's just off the chain. I mean, it's simple, it's direct, it moves people, and it's all. And then suddenly in that moment I realized this has been my dream the whole time. Because back in the day, I dreamed about being a major label act.
Yeah.
Secret, I still do. And I will sign, if it's the right deal, Columbia.
Listen to
Rick
that,
Rubin,
labels.
I'm talking to you, Rick. And but that was the dream, to not have to do everything. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to keep control of everything when my dream is to not have control of everything.
Yeah.
So that was eye-opening.
I'll bet. That's really cool.
Like, oh man, and now I'm like, Javier, please focus only on me. But no, because he's too good, and he's got his own agenda. So we work together when we can. He's producing this new song that this other lady wrote.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's gonna be awesome too.
Oh yeah, that sounds like a neat venture there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that ultimately one of the things I've noticed in talking to people that are in the business, maybe higher up on the totem pole than I am, is that it's like working with buddies. They just they're getting together with their buddies, having a good time, and music comes out of it.
Yeah.
And that's the great thing about it. When you look at all this ages me here, but when you look at all the old school guys like Eric Clapton or Phil Collins or Sting or Peter Gabriel or all those cats, they all know each other. And they'll even tour together sometimes and play shows together, and they're all friendly with each other and respect each other musically and just as friends, it seems like a lot of times too.
Yeah.
And I think that if we keep that in mind when we're collaborating with our friends, and we choose people to collaborate with that we know are going to bring something valuable to our project that we can't bring, then it really can be a neat thing.
Yeah. And that's what I started to realize, is that I can still be a leader, which is kind of an inspiring thing to try to be. But the best leader is someone who just surrounds himself with people who are better than him.
Yeah.
Rather than some other leaders who are not good, who try to surround themselves with people who are lower than them so they can stay ahead.
Yeah.
Right. And it took me a while to figure that out.
That's very Miles Davis. Davis-esque there.
Yeah. Did he do that?
Well, Miles was he's a horn player, and he would assemble a group and kind of let them go off, and they'd start to fall apart. And he would come back in and guide them with his horn.
Yeah.
So he was always the leader, and it might even just be one note that he'd come in and turn that thing around with. But they would all hear that and cue off of that when they were starting to get lost.
Yeah.
But then he would also choose musicians that were good enough to where he could come in and just count out a rhythm and say, okay, we're doing this one in 13, guys, and we're in the key of A. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and then they'd start,
See, that's another aspect of my sort of dream, almost has nothing to do with music, is that I just love that sort of sense of excellence.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily a thing where I'd buy a BMW or something. It's just like being a professional, especially if you're doing well and you have resources, means that you have the time and resource and the privilege, it's really a privilege, to do things really well, to get really good. And I love being around people who are just super competent.
Yeah.
Other people that are new are awesome too, that you can teach, but there's just this mindset. It's a mindset. Even when you're first starting out, there's a mindset of, I can do it. And I will take the time to understand and be thorough. And like when you're in that room and you can say, like, I've been on a stage with a band in Houston a couple of times where I was able to just teach them the song on the stage at the show. Like just say, okay, this is what the progression is. It's an E minor, it's 1, 4, 5, 7. And then in the chorus, it's just going to be 1, 4, 7 or, whatever it is. And then they go, okay, and what's your rhythm? And I go, it's about 110 BPM. Boom, chee, boom, boom, chee. All of a sudden the band kicks in.
Wow.
And then I'm gonna sing this song right now. And I'm thinking I would have had to rehearse. There's a downside to doing that live because you can't really get the subtlety. So I like also to be able to get in the studio or get in the rehearsal room and get that subtlety down and get really, like I think Bruno Mars was in an interview one time that I didn't even hear, but my mom was telling me about, where he's like, this is like, we pay attention to every single detail. And I don't have an illusion that actually matters in the end. When it comes to business, detail really isn't as important as you think, because really what it's important is what's making money. But the dream is to have the business working well enough to be able to go and look at that detail. And that's what art is, right? As a little, or even if it's fucking gelato, right?
Yeah, that's
you can do one of two things. You can make a lot of money by doing something mediocre or even bad that's just efficient, or you can be super you can make Fiats or you can make BMWs. I don't know that that's a good.
That's probably a good analogy there. Yeah. Fix it again, Tony.
Yeah, fix it. And yeah, like that's to me so. And I don't know if I want to say inspiring. It's just the drive. I want to be able to do things right.
Striving towards excellence.
Yeah.
And I really think one thing that's true about that is, especially in teaching music, how many other things can you really think of where if you hit 98% accuracy on something, that's just okay. But when you're playing a classical piece of music and you miss 2% of that piece when you're going through it,
sound very good.
It doesn't sound professional. It doesn't sound, or for that matter, even a recording, and you get that mix and that performance to about 95% or 96%, and then that's it. People really expect excellence with music, and I think that, to me, that's one of the things that has always fascinated me about it, is that sort of pursuit of excellence that is always there, whether it be in the performance or in the production with the mix and all of the aspects, to the music itself.
Oh, totally. And and you can hear it. You can so hear every little thing. I tried to record a choir not so long ago that I was singing in, and we just didn't have the tools. Try to make do with, and there are some things in recording you can make do with, like a dynamic mic, and you can go, okay, fuck it, and rock music, I don't necessarily need to use the fancy mic for this screamy vocal, I can go throw down the 58 or.
In fact, sometimes it sounds better to use an SM57 on that.
Totally, but then you get in a choir and there's certain tools that you need, and it made a difference, like we threw up these dynamics, and we didn't really have the mechanism to put them where we should have, so we just had them in front of and then there was a drum set that was just bleeding all over. We didn't really have the control we needed of the room. But add to that we were, a mediocre choir. We really had fun, and there were some, I hate to say that because somebody's going to know that I'm talking about them. But we, we were not professionals. It was an amateur choir that we were doing mostly for fun. We'd have these shows, and people would pay, admission for them. And certainly we put on a show, and we had fun, and the people liked the show. And actually a lot of the songs, sounded really great in the room. I mean, we did all right. But when we recorded ourselves, and I'm talking about me especially, because we had this one song that was the only one that sounded decent enough because the drums weren't playing, but it was very difficult. And in the room, I'm sure the people were like, wow, that's great. But I could hear me, because the mic was like right there. And I could hear me messing up that song the whole way through. I mean, I was awful. I'm saying. And it was like that one guy being off just ruined this whole... I was like, we got nothing, guys. I'm sorry. We're going to throw this away.
Yeah, that's tough. But on the flip side of that, I'll say that, and I see this a lot with my piano students, where in a performance we're always our own worst critic, and the things that we do are always going to stand out to us more so than others. And I've been able to see this in performances where I'll play something that I'll be aware that I've made mistakes in the performance, but then when I go back and I look at it, I might still be aware that there was a hiccup or a little mistake there, but most other people won't even notice that. Sort of like when we get a zit, we think that zit is so big and nasty on our cheek, but then it turns out that nobody even notices or cares.
And that's sort of, that's kind of two contrary things we just presented, but they really are both true at the same time. Where, there's some things that you don't need to pine over, and we used to say, my first mentor, Manny Rettinger, and me, we used to say, do it and rue it. There's a point at which you got to say, it's done, man. There's never going to be, you expect excellence, and you want to look at every detail, and you want to really try, and you want to really get to where you're just competent as hell, and you're looking for that. But at some point, you realize you're not going to be perfect. You can never be perfect. You can seek perfection, but you don't find perfection. And then at some point, you just have to release the thing.
Yeah. And what's funny, too, is, what I find interesting about that topic today is that when you look back at the music, like let's use Rolling Stones as an example. You look at a Rolling Stones record and you listen to Mick Jagger singing on there, you can tell he didn't use pitch correction on there. But in a way, if those records, or Led Zeppelin is another example with Robert Plant, you know, in a way, if they had tweaked those recordings to perfection, or if they had used the DAW to shift over John Bonham's bass drum so that it was lined right up on the grid instead of being a little bit off that grid, which is part of what gives him the sound that he has, those songs wouldn't have sounded like they sound. And today, I think that because we have the ability to produce to perfection, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good thing to do. So like you said, sometimes not only just for the sake of getting the project out, but for the sake of not making the project become sterile, because it just loses all of its character out of trying to make everything perfect. And I think in a lot of ways, that's the problem that we hear, like when we use keyboards or when we use, the computerized instruments and that kind of thing, is that we're lacking those human imperfections that sort of give it the character that make our ear go, oh yeah, that's real. Whether it be an out-of-tune note, or whether it be hammer or damper noise on the piano, or slides on the strings on the guitar. When you take those things out of the performance and you line everything up to that grid, it just sort of sounds like we used a sequencer to create everything. And
then people complain about that, this soulless thing, And I think, what you just pointed to is that there's a distinction between excellence and perfection.
Yes.
I want to seek excellence. I'm not necessarily seeking perfection. Seeking excellence and seeking, for me, the excellence thing and the detail thing is about a full expression of the self, Whereas, you know, when you're doing a record saying you don't have any resources and you have to half-ass everything, or you don't have any time, or you're lazy, or whatever it is, and you half-ass things, you don't feel fully self-expressed because you haven't gone all the way with the thing. You haven't done everything you could do, and you haven't left it all on the table, as they say, or left it all on the stage. You know, you hold back and it feels wrong. But that doesn't mean we're going to try to, like, erase every little freckle from the thing we want. And you know, sometimes the uglier the fucking thing, the better, you know. You know, like, that's why, you know, you get what you get sometimes. And the other thing that when you were saying that, I realized is, like, the Stones is a good example of some of those mixes are actually, from a technical standpoint, awful.
That's
you know,
true.
they're just bad, and that's because those dudes were learning it. You know, all those revolutionary cats were just figuring it out like we do, you know, like, which is weird because it's like we reinvent the wheel. But same thing in hip-hop, you know, there's all these hip-hop songs from the old school that I love, and then they'll come on the radio. I'll be driving in the car or something, and some of that old school hip-hop will come, and I'll go, oh, this is terrible. I mean, as far as the mix goes, you know, like, from a technical standpoint, you realize, well, that's because they just were reinventing the wheel. They were just these revolutionaries that were like, we're going to figure this out. These white people aren't going to tell us how to do it, and they're going to help us, so fuck them, we're going to do it.
Yeah, we're just going to do it on our own.
And then over time they figure it out, and you can see the evolution of hip-hop especially. And what's always fascinating to me is that the evolution of an art form like rap isn't just some evolution that's just sort of disconnected from people. You can hear it in an individual. You can hear LL Cool J go from da 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 to like da ba da da ba da 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 ba ba. Like, he evolved. I evolved, like, as people, and then the art form itself evolves. So it's pretty neat. It's pretty cool stuff. I don't know how that connects really to what we were just talking about, but
well, it does. It does, in terms of how, you know, we're sort of, I think, addressing stylistically how, you know, how perfection, like you said earlier, isn't necessarily the same thing as excellence. And that stylistically, you know, it's interesting, even if you listen back before, you know, the goal of the big band period and even the 50s music, a lot of it, like Pat Boone and stuff like that, was to sort of, again, to perfect, you know, almost trying to take the jazz and the blues scene, which was being developed during that time, and then trying to big bandicize it to make it sound more produced and polished and that kind of thing. And then the following period, you know, the 50s, where everything is based on the primary chords and real neat and tidy and clean. But then when you get to the 60s and the 70s, it became more about style, like it was more stylistic. So even, you know, on Sirius XM, sometimes I like to listen to the 40s station on there. And when you hear singers, you know, nobody that recorded from the 40s would need auto-tune, you know, or pitch correction, because their voice is already so well trained. They were so rehearsed for that part that it was perfect. And or close to perfect, you know, close to it.
It was what a human can do, you know, and I sort of sometimes reminisce about when people didn't have all the technology that, you know, I am not a Luddite, but I do think that it makes you lazy, and it makes me lazy. You know, when I decided that I would stop making productions by just sort of throwing together loops and putting, you know, on the DAW, I would write songs first, and even to where I would be able to play the whole song. I mean, that was the sort of revolution in my career where these, and then I go to produce them, they're actually better on all levels because there's this underpinning of solid
performance there.
And you know, people get even kind of righteous about it, like, oh, this dude has auto tune, you know. By the way, I never use auto tune except to make something sound crazy,
like an effect.
You know, and I don't necessarily always sound perfect, I don't think, but I don't, you know, like, in fact, I don't think that good a singer, technically. You know, but it's like the auto-tune doesn't sound like I want it to sound. I want to sound like a badass, right? Is my main sort of thing, and which I don't know if that comes through at all, but that's what I want. I want to be a badass. So like, it's all about, can I be a badass, right? And then like in Poetry Slam, of course, that was when I sort of learned how human beings are still capable of being really incredible at something with no help from any kind of, I mean, in poetry, just, that's you. You're not even allowed to have another writer helping you. You just, I got to move these people, right? And the thing is that people can do, just, when they're not even singing, they're not even using music to open people's hearts. And they're just like these words, and you're just like, oh, you're killing me, you know? Like, I almost want to say I miss that. I miss the opportunity to be like a badass human, you know, that can walk into a room and just kill it.
Knock it out on the mic.
Yeah, I just want to blow up spots, you know. But it'd be cool it's cool also to have the band and stuff, and music helps you ride a bigger wave, you know, and open. I always said a melody can open the heart, and then the words go in there.
Oh, that's cool. I like that.
And so, you know, I think music is more powerful, and that's why it's financially more viable. I just said that music was financially more viable than something. Yeah. So
for some people, right? For a few people out there.
Yeah, well, more is, you know, still might. No, I don't believe in the myth that you can't make money in music. It is,
I don't either.
or that even that it has to be hard. But, you know, just for those youngsters out there listening, it is work. And, you know, one song you don't want to have as a theme song if you want to be a pro is the I don't want to work. If you just want to bang on the drum all day, you don't want to work, then get a job. Get a job where it's easy.
Yeah, exactly. Something where it's not as frustrating if it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think, too, that it's important. I know for me, I didn't feel like I was really doing the right stuff until I started doing music. And once I started doing music, things started to come together better. It's almost like a harmony. I was sort of out of harmony with myself when I wasn't being true to what I really loved. Yeah. But once I fell into trying to develop my living in something that I really loved to do, then I saw things come together more.
Yeah.
So even though it can be hard, like you said, it's definitely not impossible, and you know, it's fun work. I mean, I don't know very many musicians who are doing music because they just are doing it for the money. Most people do it because they love it.
Yeah, and yeah. I mean, I have mixed feelings about that because, you know, there are times when it's a real grind. And, you know, like yesterday I was cutting vocals, and then what I do if I'm going to cut vocals for that, something like that, is, you know, I'm going to give them to Javier, and I cut them, and then I sort of comp them. And there's this period where I'm kind of into it, and I'm excited, and I'm proud of what I've done, and I've cut the comp, and I listened to the song probably literally like 200 times a day. And ostensibly I'm looking for flaws, and I'm analyzing it, but I'm really just into it, right?
Yeah.
And what I'll notice when I do that is that I'm not doing that fully just because, I love this. There's this thought in me that goes, man, I didn't choose to be built like this. This is what I'm built for. And if you asked me what I wanted to be built for, if you told me right now, we could change your body, we could make you as young as you want, whatever, I would probably still go be a pro hockey player.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm not necessarily the dreamer that's like, I want to be a musician.
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's fucking me up, so I better just do it, right? Because I will feel, like you said, something will feel off.
Yeah.
If I don't do what I am. And even within the business, I'm noticing if I go over in this direction too far, you know, like I've been working with Sync, as you know, we've been talking about licensing, and I've been working on that. But I noticed that if I veer off into this direction of I'm going to try to write any old song and read the listings and go, okay, I'll do a samba song, it ain't me.
Yeah.
And I start to go, you are wasting the time that you have to go and be you, right? So you'll see me on stage before too long again, because it's like I have not been on stage in a long time very much, and my heart's going, you have to.
You're getting drawn back.
Yeah, and it's not. I would not call it a want, because really what I want to do is go play hockey.
It's more of a need.
It is more of a need, and that's what a lot of artists say, is that like, I can't not do this.
Yeah.
And I don't get that, but that's how it is, baby.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I feel that way too. It's, I've actually tried. We were talking earlier about struggling, and at different points in my life, I've actually tried to convince myself, you should, do music as a hobby and have a career doing this or have a career doing that. But every time I tried to do that, it didn't feel right.
Yeah, I have the same. I actually even said that to my advisor from my master's program at Stanford one time. This was 10 years ago. I said to him, I think that music should be my hobby. I'm just sick of it. And do you know of any programs where I could be an environmental scientist or something? I care about the environment a lot. And, he was like, yeah, that sounds good. He was just being supportive. But, if I talk to him again, I'm going to say, I don't feel that way anymore. It's like, I was just scared, Don't make life decisions in the winter, is my advice.
That's true, yeah.
You feel scared in the winter, right? There's just this visceral feeling of fear. So my advice is don't make those kind of decisions.
And, a bigger point to what you're saying, because even several of the topics we've talked about today are, don't let your fears stop you from doing the things that you think are good for you to do.
Which, by the way, is the subject of the new song that I was just cutting yesterday with Kim Krennick and Javier Silva. There's a little promo there. So I think it's a good segue to sort of go out and end this deal. Anything else, though, that you would like to sort of impart?
Let's see. I'll reiterate what I just said, and that is, don't let fears stop you from your dreams, and instead realize that sometimes you'll have some ups and downs, but ultimately, if you're following your dreams, it will ultimately work out for you.
All right, this has been Aaron J. Trum and Rick Hale on behalf of Twisted Pop. Larry Lyons and Troy Winscott will be with you next time. Thank you. Goodbye!
Thanks. See you later.
Thank you for listening to the Twisted Pop Podcast. For show notes, go to twistedpop.com/podcast. Merchandise at bigmyth.com. That's BIG-MYTH.com. In association with nquick.com. Until next time, this is the Twisted Pop Podcast. Free!